Hi, my name's Samuel Findlay, and you're listening to the ACES podcast. In this episode, I share a conversation with clinical professor, burn surgeon, and 2005 Australian of the Year, Professor Fiona Wood. We chat about her career in medicine and plastic surgery, pioneering the spray-on skin technique, treating Bali bombing survivors in 2002, future collaborations, and much more. So, let's get to our conversation. So I'm chatting to clinical professor and burn surgeon, Professor Fiona Wood this morning. Thanks so much for joining me.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's lovely to be asked. Thank you.
How have you been? Obviously, COVID-19's changed the lives of most of us. How have you been holding up, and how's work, I guess, changed for you?
Well, it's been really interesting, isn't it? The world's most remote city. I'm based in Perth, and it's come into its own, I think. There's been very little, fortunately, COVID infection here, but an awful lot of COVID activity, if that makes sense. In that, in March, we had a meeting. I remember sort of mid-March, Monday morning, going into the Children's Hospital and looking at what was happening around the world. I went immediately to the clinic and the burns team in the Children's Hospital. We changed the configuration of the clinic. We removed furniture, clutter, toys, all that sort of thing. We stopped our elective surgery, our reconstructive work, but continued. Obviously, we had to continue our acute work, and then did the same at the adult hospital and then at the university. We've got, to all our students, we've got maybe a couple of weeks. Let's work out how we can get the most data out in the next couple of weeks, and then establish a roster so that the experiments can keep going, and so one person is in here each day, so we can process the biobank specimens, we can keep the cells alive, etc. And so there's been a lot of activity, a lot of change, and I've seen a lot of people, for example, in their own home through video links, and our clinics changed radically. So there's a lot of activity and a lot of readjustment. And that brings a level of anxiety in the system, doesn't it? Are we supposed to do this? Is this going to be okay? And I'm very pragmatic about, well, let's look at the common sense here. Let's stay within the framework, but we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's like in having a roster so that we could keep our experiments going, for example. But really interesting times.
So we'll get to what you're currently doing in a moment, but I wanted to go back to begin and I guess ask how it all began for you and why you decided a career in medicine.
I was from the north of England, a young kid who I was fortunate in that I got into the latter part of school, and it became obvious to me that I could do maths and science pretty easily. And so that was where I was channeled and making my choices around that. I was focused on going to uni. Initially, I was looking at maths and physics, at Cambridge. But my brother was 2 years ahead of me, and he was in medical school, and coerced, persuaded me to change my preferences. And we had a great party weekend in London, and I'm ashamed to say that just tipped me over the balance, and I changed my preference to med, and the rest is history, as they say.
So I don't know if this is true or not, but I was doing a little bit of research for this interview, and I happened to go on Wikipedia, and it read that you had quite a successful career as a sprinter. Is that correct?
Oh, up until about being 15, I was actually I'm really short, and I was quite tall for my age early, if you like. So I was very focused on running for a long time, yes. And but as I got a little bit older, I started, from 100 meters to 200 to 400 because I had the tenacity and the stamina to keep going, and the sort of my headset, I guess, but I just didn't have the ability to keep going and winning, and but I was quite disciplined around that, and that really, I think you learn a lot from sport: how to win more frequently, how to lose gracefully, and how to plan to do better, to drive your personal best. So So there's a lot of learnings from sport. I think you don't get anything without hard work.
Yeah.
and you've got to be pragmatic about your ability at some point. Yeah,
that's right. So you said obviously you're from England originally, and now you're currently living in Perth. How did that move come about?
Well, I was taking an exam. It was the general surgery. I was a general surgeon first, and then subsequently subspecialised in plastic and reconstructive surgery, and then into burn surgery. So at the time, I was taking an exam for general surgery, and we did have cramming courses, for want of a better term. The people running this course would hate me to say that, but essentially it was a cramming course for in the northern suburbs of London, and there were 40 of us. And within the audience, there was one Australian. None of us knew. And only 3 weeks later, we decided to get married, and we were married the first week. We both had a weekend off roster, which was 10 weeks later. So it was very much a, whoa, yeah, no worries, we can do this.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And so, 35 years later, and 6 kids later, we're still batting along. But it was an interesting time. Maybe we were both too busy. He says we were the last 2 on the shelf. But anyway, and we just we're very sort of got on with it. Yeah.
So I guess why focusing more so on that burn surgery and becoming a plastic surgeon rather than a different area of medicine?
Well, I guess certainly I started as a medical student exploring what was going on, and plastic surgery is very innovative and it's creative. They're doing interesting work where microsurgery was first starting and things like that, and tissue engineering. And so I was drawn to that as a med student. And I had met great people who were working in that space who supported me in a very, at a time when I was very vulnerable. I mean, there weren't many females around, and I was very fortunate to be supported by a lot of guys who recognized that what the most important thing was that people were prepared to work hard. Yeah, and I certainly ticked that box. And so I had that exposure to plastic and reconstructive surgery early on. And so as I went through my first couple of years, we do general and did a bit of orthopedics, but bits of this and that and the other. I kept gravitating back to plastic and reconstructive surgery, and within that, burn struck me as a really, really challenging area, and it is, and it still is. And so I got drawn to the challenge and the holistic issues. It's more than burns is more than skin deep, and I know that now absolutely categorically. That our cellular memory at a fundamental level is changed by our burn injury, particularly in children at those formative years. And so it was, I guess, when I look back, was it inevitable that I went into something that I found so challenging? And I guess yes, but it could have been other things if I'd been exposed to different subjects. But it's a combination of being exposed to patients with their problems and being fascinated by trying to work it out. And you get slowly down that sort of rabbit hole. And I still find it fascinating every day, still looking to see if we can do better, how we can look at the technology and experience and knowledge across the world and bring that to bear to an individual whose life has changed in an instant. Yeah. So clearly I'm quite passionate about it.
Yeah, certainly. And where was your first, professional job out of university once you'd, finished your studies?
August 1981, I walked straight into the wards of St Thomas's Hospital Medical School, the hospital there, as a houseman. And I was a surgical houseman there. And then I went to Yorkshire so I could see mum and dad for a period of time, and I lived at home for 6 months while I was a medical houseman. In those days, we did 6 months surgery, 6 months medicine, and then I was back into London after that, and always in a surgical stream from there on in.
Right, so when was the move to Australia?
Well, that was, as I said, marrying an Australian when we were both surgery registrars in the south of England, and he made it very clear to me. He said, it's non-negotiable. You marry me, you live in Perth, and that's not Scotland. And so I thought, oh yeah, whatever. But he was right. It was non-negotiable. In 1987, the professor of surgery here, who my husband had worked for in vascular surgery, an academic, Professor House, said it was about time he came back. And so we did, by which time I had a 15-month-old and a 5-week-old when we came here. Yeah, so that was an interesting plane journey.
I bet. Not much sleep.
Was not much sleep anyway. I was so excited. And I got here in November, and I woke up the next morning. I said, wake up. And I was like, what's the matter? I said, it's sunny. We can't miss a sunny day. And he kind of looked at me. There'll be 320 more of them this year. I'm like, what? You're kidding me? Yeah.
Slightly different from the UK.
Absolutely, yeah. Walk around the streets with my babies in the pram, and there'll be nobody out because it's like Mad Dogs and Englishmen, go out in the midday sun.
So you're obviously well known for pioneering the spray-on skin technique. Can you talk a little bit about how that sort of came about?
That's the tissue engineering story, really. I've been tracking the concept of taking cells and skin cells that are not injured and growing them into sheets of cells to mimic a skin graft. Was work that started in Boston, in MIT and Brigham and Women's Hospital and the Shriners Hospital there in the late 70s, early 80s. I think first used clinically in 1982, I think. The guys in East Grinstead, where I was working in 85, in the lab there, were trying to do this work. And I've been tracking it in the literature. And the first patient we used it on in Western Australia was in 1990, where we sent skin to Melbourne because the guys had just come back from Boston and learned how to grow the skin cell sheets. And so we sent our first 12 cases to Melbourne, and by 93 we had a funding for a laboratory with telethon funding, and Marie Stoner, medical scientist, and myself started really getting to that, like, let's make this work for our patients in our model of care. I wanted speed was really important, the time to healing. And so that's where we started. And, we spent a lot of time in the lab, in the theatre, analysing and the evolution of the technique from sheets to suspension with immature cells. And then we eventually developed a point-of-care medical device where we can harvest skin cells of that individual that are not injured and immediately apply them to a prepared wound. And that's what's, just got FDA approval in 2018 and is now used quite broadly in various places in the world.
Wow. And work you're obviously well known for as well is treating Bali bombing survivors in 2002. I guess, could you explain that experience?
That is an experience that it still remains quite surreal in my mind.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't an individual. I very much have always been embedded in teams. I inherited a fantastic multidisciplinary team as I started as director of the service in 1991, and that team has grown and in its capacity, and also I would say we work in an interdisciplinary team now, because we work with engineers, with scientists, with population health data linkage people. We're much broader than the traditional medical, nursing, allied health, but that forms the core of our team, and certainly did at that time. We had done a lot of work in disaster response in association with Woodside Petroleum, because they were building, extending the Northwest Gas Shelf, and what would happen if there was an accident there. So we'd spent a good deal of time developing a national disaster plan that had gone to the Australian Health Ministers Advisory Council for approval in July of 2002, and it was approved in August, and we responded in October. And so that response was an Australian response, but it's an Australasian plan that caught the attention internationally, and it was based on a lot of hard work before, and clearly a lot of hard work at the time. But it's like anything: you trained for something, you planned it, then you're in a position to execute that plan, and then learn from it so that you can do better into the future. And that was the space we were all in, and it was happening across Australia, as I say, under that sort of planning process.
Yeah, wow. And you've obviously had many accomplishments and been recognised for many things in your career, such as being named Australian of the Year. I wonder, what's your most proud accomplishment in your career?
Oh, wow, that's a hard thing to say. I mean, I wasn't actually, having 6 kids, I think, I've been really lucky. They're a great crew, and certainly when I had a house full of teenagers, I never realised how stupid I was until that point in time. You could consider that bad planning. But anyway, I've been very fortunate that I've been able to be the mother to such interesting folks. But oh gosh, there's so many things that I'm proud of, like kind of almost daily, seeing some of the team achieve. Like most recently, our senior nurse at the Children's Hospital has just got her PhD, and you think like, yes. And it's been a long hard slog for her because she's worked full time during this time, and but she's now Dr. McWilliam, so that's really cool. And there's been those sorts of things, and then you see the pride you see when you've the job well done, and you think, oh, that was worth doing. And then I've been really lucky. I remember someone asking me, when did you really know you're Australian of the Year? And I said, when I really knew I was Australian of the Year, when I was looking down from the Parliament House that evening, I should say, and there were 30,000 people and all the flags. And There I was, getting the trophy from John Howard. And my kids wouldn't stop clapping. They kept making people keep clapping. And I was trying to give them
so they should
to stop them, but they kept going on. But then that was something that was a really special moment.
Yeah. And
I've been very, very lucky.
And you also co-founded the Fiona Wood Foundation. Can you explain what that foundation, I guess, stands for and the work that I guess the foundation does?
Well, the foundation wasn't always the Fiona Wood Foundation, because that sounds a bit strange. Very, very long time ago, when Marie and I first started, the system was such that I'm a full-time public hospital employee now, and have been for a very long time. But initially, I was a sort of 0.8 public hospital and 0.2 private practice, because that's the way we were expected to work 20% of our time in private. And I found that really challenging because I didn't quite understand the whole system. And I'd come from, the Scargill country, so it was a little bit strange to me. And one of my friends said that, for your research, why don't you ask your patients, your private patients? And so what we did was we established the McComb Foundation, because Harold McComb was my great mentor, a very special plastic surgeon with extraordinary intellect and capacity. And so we started the McComb Foundation, and not obviously charitable, not for profit. And I would write, when I sent the bill out to a private patient, I would only charge them what they get from Medicare, and say, if you want to pay more, sounds really strange. Give me more, if you like. If you'd like to pay more, you can donate to the charity, and it will be tax deductible. And so that's how we started supporting our research with people, and we would. People were very generous, and in addition to that, we would go, and I remember Marie going to the cherry pickers and ending up in a tight skirt up in a cherry picker, cherry picker high up over the cherry pickers auction, which was real cherries, because they donated to us. And the boot scooting festival, taking all my kids to the boot scooting festival, and so on it went. And so that was how we established our research funding in early days, as well as competitive granting and things. And that was how we linked in with corporate people like Woodside and Chevron and Levin and Legal and people who've helped us along the way through this not-for-profit foundation. And as we've gone forward, and I'm kind of handing over the reins, and our chair now is Tony Kiernan, who was chair of Anglicare for a long time and is a very high-flying lawyer. Then they changed the name to the Fiona Wood Foundation. And so the Fiona Wood Foundation is specifically to support the research around burns and scarring and the education and the psychological support of our burn patients through our learning management systems. And it's given us an opportunity to link with very generous people across our system that have helped us keep going, and it's made it possible for our research to keep going in what we all know is a really tough time. Research competitive granting is tough. And what happens when you don't get the grant? Well, this has kept us going in those lean years as well. And Marie and I, way back, signed our intellectual property for the cell spray, the ReCell kit. And so now the royalties, we had the idea that the royalties from that technology would help our research. And yes, we got there in the end, because now we have significant royalties coming through that also support the foundation, which in turn supports the research in burns and scarring across our system. So that's the story of the foundation, which is ongoing.
So you've obviously worn many hats throughout your career. I guess, how do you go juggling all of those roles?
Oh, I feel like a Chinese plate juggler. Yeah. I don't want to drop that one. It'll make a really big smash. But sometimes you just have to be, really pragmatic. I've been really fortunate to be able to work with people all the way along the way. That at time, that people will stay for a long haul. Some come and go, but delegating and working together sort of lightens the load and means we're more productive. But I've had a really interesting experience of late around the COVID situation. I'm a great believer that there's an awful lot of human energy. The most underutilized resource we have is the human brain, yeah? And so why don't we ask people what their ideas are? And there's an, I think, platform that is owned by our public sector in our government. And it started just over a year ago. It was facing internally. And during COVID and now, we were able to negotiate, and the public sector commission negotiated with Crowdicity to increase the number of licenses and turn it community facing. And the idea is that you put up challenges on the platform and the community can put forward their ideas. But of course then, and so we put challenges up on the platform that were supported by the government. And then, but what do you do with those ideas? So myself and a girl, Gemma Green, is an innovation officer in local government, and Chatina, who works for the RAC, we've got together an advisory board that's really very comprehensive, and everybody pro bono. And so we've put together this hub of all the innovation hubs and different groups, like our Institute of Management and RSC, HBF and things. And so started processing those ideas and connecting people, and because many ideas were similar, and connecting people with government or people so that they could develop their idea, and so on. It's gone, and so we've got 140 ideas of substance through the system, and I've done things like with STEM for Innovation is a group at Curtin University and John Curtin High School, and with Zoom. I went on a tour around a COVID operating theatre, all set up for COVID patients, and one that normal with with no one in there, just me and the Zoom, and at the other end of the Zoom, year 12, 11 and 12 kids, and that with their questions and answers, and that video's gone on to a closed section of the platform, of the I Think platform, and we have up, I think, close on 800 school kids and their teachers linked into that now, or linking into that, and then they go through a design thinking process, trying to teach people how to problem solve and design think, and then they will be pitching their ideas in a few weeks' time. And so that was an interesting, looking at that as a pilot. Is this something we can help with STEM in schools by, getting people like myself in all sorts of different industries, just going on a half an hour of your daily work? Well, where does science intersect and creativity and everything intersect with this job, and how could it be done better? And it could be anything you like. So we're doing that as a pilot to see where we go with that, and presenting that to the education minister. And we're absolutely neck deep in a piece of work on telehealth, telemedicine. Huge response around COVID, and a huge response from the community. And we had a workshop yesterday that was face-to-face with limited numbers. It was oversubscribed. We send out an invite for 2 virtual workshops next week, oversubscribed within 24 hours. So we're really working out how can we actually engage everybody who wants their voice heard in this space. Huge opportunity for changing the way we practice and moving towards a hybrid model of face-to-face as well as using technology, and how we use it in the right place at the right time for the right person, and giving the person choice. So a huge piece of work that we're kind of like, whoa. To have what we did at Deloitte's, and all this is pro bono. EY are doing their telehealth workshops and all pro bono, and people have been so generous. And Deloitte's did a design sprint for us a couple of weeks ago. It was full within 24 hours. So people are interested. It is we need to understand how to help each other during this time, because it's not over yet, and we've got to deal with. But I'm really amazed and grateful for the amount of energy and interest people are showing. So let's actually look at this as an opportunity to drive health, wellness, and understand prevention, and understand how we can make decisions for ourselves that impact on the community around us in a positive way. So exciting times with lots of opportunity.
Yeah, and I guess my next question relates to that somewhat, but I remember last year when you visited ACES to give a workshop and an address, remember you said we have to do better. And I wonder if that sort of really resonated with myself and a lot of the researchers that were in the workshop. But I wonder, how can researchers approach, this idea of making a difference, and how do you make a difference, with given the area that you're in?
I think communication is key, isn't it? Because the days of the scientist in the dark laboratory beavering away and coming out with the eureka moment. I mean, I'm not sure that ever happened anyway. I said the other day, I don't think Archimedes just jumped in that bath once. He'd been doing it over and over and no, it wasn't. He worked at that anyway. So I think we know we live in a time where capacity for communicate is unprecedented. That's an overused word at the moment. And so by communication, we can understand where our ideas and where our work fits in the big tapestry. And it has to fit in the tapestry in order to get traction and to be of use. I don't think there's anything that is wasted. It is only wasted if it's not if it doesn't get shared, because it sparks other ideas. It fits a little piece of the jigsaw, even if it's negative. And especially we're bad at actually taking it on the chin and saying, "Oh, I did this experiment and it wasn't right." Well, then let's tell you so that the next dozen people do it better. So it comes just down to this: having the courage to communicate. And I say courage, and I think that matters on a number of levels. Intellectual property, I understand that. But let's have the courage to put our priorities in the right place. And let's have the honor. I'd like to introduce an honor system such that when the intellectual property is actually on the table, it is dealt with honorably. And that we all believe that it and buy into that, so that we don't have some kind of rogue going off and stealing everything. I mean, it's just, no, that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
And if we have communication, I think that's less likely to happen. I think if we have strong collaboration based on strong relationships, then that is much less likely to happen. There's always going to be bad eggs here and there, but we can't let those bad eggs here and there impact our whole future. The future, no. We have to have the courage, for the good ones to stand up and say, actually, no, I'm going to share this because I think if I share it, it's going to get better, and I will grow, and my idea will grow, and as a result, it will be connected into this massive, complex tapestry of life, And if it makes a little difference, or if it makes a big difference, doesn't matter. What matters is that my energy is of worth. That sounds kind of a bit philosophically naive, I think, but it has the right kind of feel for me. Honor, integrity. That's what underpins science.
Yeah. I wonder, this is something I've asked everyone that I've had on the podcast so far, but I wonder, do you have a morning routine or something that you do every day that helps you approach your work?
Yeah, it varies over the years, but actually for some years now, and I've really liked being at home because I usually get up at 5, and I always check emails, get everything set, and then I exercise. Mm-hmm. And that can be like this morning. It was an exercise class on Zoom with my son's fiance. She's been doing that for us a few times a week for a long time. And then I'm in the ocean. And it's the ocean, whether it's the ocean in the summertime, I'll be in there at maybe 5:36, like it's dark at the moment. So it was just getting light. And when I was in there at about 6:30 this morning, but we're nearly at the shortest day. I think that's Monday, and we start getting light again, so I can get in earlier. Some days I go in the dark, and it's scary. I was like, can't see where I'm going, and I just play in the waves. I walk down to the beach and play in the waves, and it clears my head. It's actually, I'd have to say, it's cold right now, so it wakes me up. That's for sure. But it feels good. I used to ride in the mornings, and then sometimes get in the water after riding if I had time. But I think now I ride my bike later in the day occasionally, but not as often as I used to ride. But because I like the water in the mornings, it sets me up. And I've always been a person that's exercised every day. And that's harder when you're traveling. That's why I really enjoy being home for this time, because I can get into my favourite place, which is the ocean. And so I think doing something to keep your sort of you're fit and healthy is important.
Yeah, definitely. I actually do the same thing. I jump in the ocean most mornings, and it is getting a little bit colder the last couple of weeks. But it's a great way to start the day. Yeah,
it sure is. You've got a great spot there. Yeah. I was like, always have to remember to bring my babies when I come over to see you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
The sun goes down the wrong way.
Yeah, I think it's getting about it's getting light at about 7 a.m. or just before 7 a.m. here now. So I'm not as game as you. I don't go in when it's dark.
Yeah, no, it's like, where's that wave coming?
Exactly. I wonder if you weren't doing, what you do for a living, what do you think you might be doing as a different career, if anything?
Oh, I don't. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you look back and there's sort of those sliding doors along the way, and you pop at the other end, and you look back, you think, how would it have been if the doors slid a different way? And the only thing I know is I've been fortunate that I've got the capacity to work and the energy, and whatever I would have done like 100%. You know, I'm just that sort of person. When I'm saying that, the words echo my dad's words, like, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing properly, lass. You know, it's like, don't bother, otherwise just don't bother. And I guess there's two ways you could take that, is not to bother or do it properly. And I took the do it properly very seriously. And I think capacity to work is something that I feel very fortunate that I have that, you know, and I know that is something that is intrinsic to just the way I am, and but it's something you can work on and build, and maybe I've just built it along the way.
Yeah. And just to sort of finish up the podcast, I guess, I wonder if there's any future plans.
Oh, there's always so much to do, and so it's so exciting. Our 3D printing work, which has brought us to Wollongong as well, with Gordon Wallace, and and all your team there, and looking at the various things we can do around sutures and printing different molecules on there, and printing skin at the point of care, and not just the cells but the whole framework. Looking at the neurology, one day. The skin is a giant receptor, and the neurology of the injury and recovery fascinates me. One day, maybe we will be able to think ourselves whole. Isn't that cool? That's sort of exciting. And understanding how the brain changes during these things, and understanding the chemistry of injury, healing and scarring, so that we can actually see how it links with all the systemic problems, whether it be heart or brain. And the work, it goes on. I just signed another 5-year contract yesterday, and I'm already over.
Congratulations.
I'm like, do I really want to do this? Okay then. So I don't think I'll ever retire. I'll just redeploy. And the areas, surgery is getting harder and harder as you get older, and so I teach and they're in that capacity. But I don't want to be a surgeon that gets tapped on the shoulder. I will teach and support. But the research again is the ideas that wake me up in the morning and think, that's interesting. And so linking with everybody and collaborating around those ideas is really what will keep me going, I think, into the future.
So when the whole COVID situation is behind us and travel's a little bit more acceptable, have you got any plans to come back to ACES headquarters in Wollongong and maybe, progress that collaboration?
Oh yes, yeah, and we managed to get the team over to us before the barriers.
That's right, yeah, it's perfect timing.
Yeah. Yes, and so I think it's on the cards that I'll be over there with Mark as well, and the team over with us, and so I think it's a very strong collaboration. And Gordon's the workshop I was at not that long ago with all our different printing, with the orthopedics, the ENT, all these different subjects. I mean, it was fascinating and really exciting. So now I think there's a lot of reason to come and see you, as well as the beach.
Yeah, definitely. That's great to hear. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to have a chat. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and all the best going forward.
Well, thank you very much, and you all guys stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Definitely. Thanks, Fiona. Thanks for listening to the ACES podcast. For more episodes like this one, be sure to subscribe wherever it is you get your podcasts. You can also find more information about ACES on our website, electromaterials.edu.au. There you'll find links to our various social media platforms. And you can also follow me on Twitter @SamuelFindlay. Until next time, thanks for listening.